So in 2024, I ended up reading a total of 107 books. 22 of those books that I read were nonfiction reads, and these are going to be my top 5. I've slowly but surely been reading more and more nonfiction books every single year. I feel like a couple of years ago I started off with memoirs because it's what really resonated with me and it was sort of my introduction to nonfiction. Ever since then, I've been exploring nonfiction books little by little, and I feel like there's so many good ones out there. The one that really did it for me was Empire of Pain that I read maybe 2 years ago. It was just so compelling. It was so addictive. So I want to go ahead and continue to find those types of nonfiction books that just grip me and I just want to continue reading. So these are my top 5 this year. These are either books that I found really gripping and interesting and I couldn't stop reading, or they're books that I found about a topic that I was interested in. By the way, these books are in no particular order, but the first one that I will be talking about is Caste, The Origins of Our Discontents by Isabel Wilkerson. This was such a phenomenal book and it should be required reading. Actually, I feel like all of the books that are on my list are or should be required reading. So in this one in particular, Isabel Wilkerson argues that the United States is built on a caste system similar to the caste system in India. However, unlike India, she argues that our caste system is informed by race. So in this book, Isabel Wilkerson starts off by defining a lot of terminologies. Then she goes into past and current historical events that outline her argument, as well as including personal anecdotes to things that she herself has experienced, which I often find very helpful in nonfiction books when I hear the experience of the person writing it. Now, as someone who primarily reads fiction books, I found this to be extremely digestible, accessible, and also really interesting to continue reading. I did a combination of audiobook and physical book, and I found that that was the best way for me to consume this. The next book on this list is a book that not necessarily opened my eyes, but it gave terminology to some of the things that I've experienced in my life that I didn't have words for. It felt extremely validating, and that's why it's on this list, and I do think that it should be required reading. And that is White Tears, Brown Scars, How White Feminism Betrays Women of Color by Ruby Hamad. Now, I will add that this book is going to make some people who read it extremely uncomfortable because it challenges the status quo and systems of oppression, and those are always going to be tricky and uncomfortable conversations. In this particular book, Ruby Hamad explores how white women benefit from white supremacy and how they actively participate to continue to uphold these systems of oppression. I also personally really loved how intersectional this book felt. Ruby Hamad talks about Indigenous women, Asian women, Latino women, and Black women in this particular book, and the ways in which white feminism is weaponized towards women of color. Again, I found this book to be incredibly validating to some of the experiences that I've had, and to actually be able to name some of the things that I've experienced, which I think is really powerful. I actually ended up consuming this book as an audiobook, and immediately after I finished, I purchased a physical copy, so that's why there's no tabs on here, but I will be rereading it and tabbing it up. In terms of readability, I also found this to be extremely accessible. I don't know if you heard that, I just saw an entire tree fall. Okay. The next book on this list is a book that I actually did not give 5 stars to, but it's a book that I continually think about and that has left a lasting impact, not only in the things that I know now, but also in the way that I'm going to move forward with purchasing and buying things. And I think it's just such an incredibly important topic, which is why it's on this list. This book is Cobalt Red, How the Blood of the Congo Powers Our Lives by Siddharth. This is a book that brings awareness to the exploitative tactics that are currently happening in the Democratic Republic of the Congo, where currently women and even children risk their lives every single day in mining operations in order to mine cobalt for very little to almost no pay, while we have tech companies that are making millions and billions of dollars profiting from this cobalt mine production. So cobalt in particular is an essential natural resource for lithium-ion batteries, which are used to power a lot of our electronics, from my phone that I'm using, the laptop that I'm going to use to edit this particular video, my camera, to EV batteries found in our electric vehicles. So I just found it to be a very timely topic because this is something that is currently going on and not a lot of people are talking about it. And I used to be one of those people who, as soon as like the new iPhone was announced, I was like, oh my god, I need to get it. And I don't know, it's just making me more cognizant of my purchases moving forward, trying to buy secondhand as much as I can, and just trying to bring awareness to this topic. So this book is laid out as a mix of testimonials from people in the DRC, as well as a mix of personal experiences that this author or journalist faced while he went to the DRC to research this topic. The author does also include historical context in the book, which I personally found really helpful in order to figure out how we got to where we are today. There are no easy solutions, and the author does not provide any. So I will personally be looking for more books related to this topic, and in particular to see what we can do to help. The next two books on this list were books that I picked up because I was interested in the topic, and I purposely looked for books that are an introduction to these topics. That way I get this umbrella view of what's going on, and then from there I can look for more targeted books for very specific details that I want to learn. So this next book is called Prisons Make Us Safer and 20 Other Myths About Mass Incarceration. This is by Victoria Law. Before I read this particular book, I was already a person who was pro-prison reform and supports a move towards restorative justice. And I thought I knew some things. However, this particular book made me realize that there's a lot of assumptions that I make about incarcerated people, and I was missing a lot of context for a lot of the things that are going on today in the American justice system or the American prison system. So this is a book that has a lot of surface level topics about the prison industrial system. It explores the causes and reasons for mass incarcerations. It also talks about the potential positive, or what we tend to think of beneficial, things for having a prison industrial complex, and dives deeper into how, even though these things are considered or laid out as positive things, they can actually be really harmful to society and to the people going through the system. She also compares the US prison system to some of the systems in other countries and the ways that other countries are succeeding with restorative justice and with making sure that people are able to integrate into society better after serving. In terms of readability, I think this is one of the more accessible books on this list. It's completely conversational. It has short and succinct chapters that give you an overview of the particular topic that the author is diving into, while also being extremely conversational, yet thought-provoking at the same time. So this is one that I highly recommend. Okay, so my fifth and final book on this list is called Erasing History: How Fascists Rewrite the Past to Control the Future. This is by Stanley. So this is actually a relatively new book. It came out back in September of 2024, if I'm not mistaken. And I've been really interested in fascism because there seems to be a rise in fascism worldwide, and I wanted to understand it a little bit better. I feel like there's a lot of people throwing that word around, and I didn't quite understand what it meant, so I wanted to do my own research. So I actually wanted to pick up a different book by this author called How Fascism Works: The Politics of Us and Them, but there was an extremely long hold time in my library. I actually still have it on hold, so I will be reading it once I get it. I think since this was a relatively new release, not a lot of people knew about it, so I ended up getting this one first. And yeah, it's extremely informative, extremely timely, and in particular, this book discusses how and why rewriting history is essential for a fascist state to take hold and have power, and the ways in which defunding educational and making it inaccessible is a tool for oppression and for dividing people. Like I mentioned, it was recently published, so there's a lot of current historical events that this author addresses that I knew about them, but I was not connecting the dots. However, the author also includes separate fascist movements that have happened in the past to compare and contrast with what is currently going on in the United States and other parts of the world, like Argentina. And it's just so interesting to see how history repeats itself and how people are not seeing the signs, I guess. Apart from Argentina and the US, this author also talks about Nazi Germany and about England's erasure of the Kikuyu in Kenya, which is a part of history that I was not at all aware of. Yeah, I feel like this particular year I really migrated from reading a lot of memoirs to reading a lot of like society and history books, and I want to continue to do that. Just continue to read more nonfiction, find things that I enjoy, subgenres within nonfiction that I enjoy. I still really love memoirs, so I'll continue to read them, but I also want to dive more into like microhistory topics and narrative nonfiction and see what other books really stand out. If you have any book recommendations for me based on the 5 books that I just mentioned, or just as a general nonfiction reader, if you have recommendations, let me know down below. I would love to check them out this coming year. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you on the next one. Bye.